The air in the exclusive Astra Lounge at Teterboro Private Airport cost more per cubic foot than most people's homes. It was a place of silent deals and billion-dollar handshakes. But Serafina Vance was about to make the loudest, most expensive mistake of her life. She looked at the black man seated across from her, a man she assumed was staff, and felt a surge of entitled irritation. With a sneer, she lifted a $4,000 bottle of Chateau Petrus. Seconds later, that single, arrogant gesture would cost her husband's family a billion-dollar deal and set in motion a devastating karma that would unravel their entire dynasty. The Astra Lounge at Teterboro was not a place, it was a filtration system. It existed to separate the wealthy from the world, and then to separate the truly powerful from the merely wealthy. It was a cathedral of beige Italian leather, brushed bronze, and sound-dampening panels that made the roar of a nearby Gulfstream G650 sound like a polite, distant cough. Serafina Vance, heiress to the Donovan global empire and wife of billionaire financier Marcus Vance, sat slumped in a suede armchair, ignoring the perfectly frothed cappuccino a near-silent attendant had placed beside her. She was bored, and when Serafina was bored, she became cruel. "Marcus, for God's sake, stop pacing," she snapped. Her voice, a low, bored drawl honed by generations of boarding schools, cut through the room's expensive hush. "You're making my skin itch. You look like a valet trying to find a misplaced car." Marcus Vance III, a man who looked perpetually stressed despite his $10,000 Brioni suit, did not stop pacing. He ran a hand through his thinning, sandy-colored hair. "It's not just a deal, Serafina. It's the deal, the Ethelred capital injection. It's $1 billion. It's—" He paused, lowering his voice. "It's everything. It's always everything," she scoffed, tapping her ruby-red fingernail against her phone. She was scrolling through photos from a charity gala, annoyed that Bunny Weatherford had worn the same shade of emerald. "You always land the plane, darling. You always do." But this time, Marcus wasn't sure he could. The family company, her family's company, Donovan Global, was a sleeping giant that had, in recent years, fallen into a coma. Her father, Arthur Donovan, had run it into the ground with a series of bad bets and gentlemen's agreements that were bleeding cash. Marcus, through his own firm Vance Donovan Holdings, had been propping up the rotting edifice for 5 years, juggling debts, placating banks, and moving money in ways that made his lawyers nervous. The billion-dollar investment from Ethelred Capital wasn't just a win. It was a lifeline. It was the only thing standing between the Vances and a catastrophic, headline-grabbing insolvency. And the final sign-off was supposed to happen today, here, before they all flew to the annual conference in Davos. The CEO, Sinclair. "Is he even here yet?" Marcus muttered, checking his Patek Philippe watch for the 10th time in 5 minutes. "Who cares?" Serafina said, signaling the attendant. "Another one," she said, pointing to her empty champagne flute, not making eye contact. "And bring the bottle, the 08 Dom, not the house swill." "Serafina, please," Marcus whispered, his eyes darting around. "We need to be on our best behavior. Julian Sinclair is intense. He's new money, but he's Blackstone, and Carlyle rolled into one. He's sharp, and he doesn't suffer fools." "New money," Serafina repeated, the words tasting like ash in her mouth. "That's all this place is anymore. Just tech grubbers and crypto children. No standards." Her eyes scanned the lounge. There was a Russian oligarch in the corner with his security detail. There was a tech CEO, still in his branded hoodie, typing furiously on a laptop. And then there was the man. He was sitting alone in the most prominent alcove, the one with the best view of the tarmac. He was black, impeccably dressed in a dark, bespoke suit with no tie, and his shoes were shined to a mirror finish. He was reading, not a tablet, but a physical, hard-cover book. He had an air of stillness and absolute focus that Serafina found, for some reason, deeply offensive. She watched as a lounge attendant approached him, spoke with extreme deference, and poured him a glass of water. The man nodded, never looking up from his book. "See?" Serafina whispered to Marcus, her voice laced with venom. "They let anyone in here now. I'm sure he has a very important job. Probably playing basketball, or perhaps he's a pilot. They're letting them fly the planes now, you know." Marcus glanced over, winced, and turned away. "Sarah, for the love of God, stop it. That's probably his new G700 out there. He could buy and sell us 10 times over." "Don't be ridiculous," she sneered. "He's probably some rapper's assistant. Or maybe he's on your mystery guest's team. Maybe he's here to carry Mr. Sinclair's bags." The man in the alcove, as if sensing the shift in the room's energy, looked up. His eyes, sharp and intelligent, scanned the room for a moment. They passed over Serafina and Marcus without a flicker of recognition or interest before landing on the attendant who was now approaching Serafina with the Dom Perignon. "It's about time," Serafina said loudly. "I was beginning to think I'd have to fly this jet sober. A fate worse than death." The man in the alcove returned to his book, but Serafina couldn't let it go. His very presence, his confidence, his expensive suit, his indifference to her, felt like a personal insult. She was Serafina Donovan Vance. People didn't ignore her. "Marcus," she said, her voice suddenly sweet and sharp as a shard of ice. "Go be useful. Go and ask that man if he's seen Mr. Sinclair. He looks like staff. Maybe he works for the lounge." "Serafina!" Marcus was horrified. "Absolutely not. I'm going to the desk to check the flight plan. You just stay here. And please, try not to start an international incident before we've even had breakfast." He hurried away, his shoulders tense. Serafina watched him go with contempt. He was weak. Her father was weak. They were all weak. She was the only one who still understood what their name meant. She took a long, deep sip of the champagne. The alcohol hit her empty stomach, fueling the small, cold fire of her resentment. She looked back at the man. He was on his phone now, speaking in low, measured tones. "Yes, the due diligence is complete," he said, his voice a calm, smooth baritone. "The Donovan Global books are a mess. The fraud is deep. No, I'm not backing out. I'm counting on it." Serafina's ears perked up. Donovan Global? She watched, her eyes narrowing. Who was this man, and what was he saying about her family's company? The champagne, which was supposed to soothe her, was having the opposite effect. It was mixing with her innate entitlement and the stress of the impending deal to create a volatile, dangerous compound. Serafina stood up, her Hermes Birkin bag swinging from her arm. She felt a familiar, ugly thrill. She was going to put this man in his place. She glided across the thick carpet, her heels sinking slightly with each step, and stopped directly in front of his alcove. The man, Julian Sinclair, looked up slowly from his phone. He didn't look startled, or intimidated, or even particularly interested. He simply looked expectant, like a scientist observing a new and predictable specimen. "Excuse me," Serafina said, her voice dripping with artificial politeness. "Yes?" His voice was even, deep, and held no trace of servitude. This annoyed her further. "I overheard you," she said, gesturing vaguely with her champagne flute. "You were speaking about a company, Donovan Global." Julian's expression didn't change. "That's correct. It was a private conversation." "My family is Donovan Global," she announced, as if presenting a royal decree. "I am Serafina Vance, Donovan Vance." She said the name Donovan, as if it should have made him flinch, perhaps even kneel. "I see," Julian said. He still hadn't stood up. This was, in Serafina's world, an unforgivable breach of protocol. One stood when she approached. "I don't think you do see," she said, the polite veneer cracking. "You're sitting here, in this lounge, discussing my family's business on the phone. Who are you? Are you on Mr. Sinclair's team? Are you his legal counsel?" She looked him up and down. His bodyguard, perhaps? The racist implication hung in the air, thick and toxic as jet fuel. Julian Sinclair finally, slowly, rose to his feet. He was tall, over 6'3", and he seemed to dwarf Serafina and the alcove itself. His suit, she now realized, wasn't just expensive. It was Savile Row, bespoke, and probably cost more than her outfit. His watch wasn't flashy, but she recognized the subtle face of a Patek Philippe Calatrava. "Ma'am," he said, and the word ma'am felt like an insult. "You are mistaken. I am not on anyone's team, and I suggest you lower your voice." "Lower my—" Serafina was incredulous. "Do you have any idea who I am? My husband and I are in the middle of a major negotiation with Ethelred Capital. Your boss, Mr. Sinclair—" "Ethelred Capital," Julian interrupted, his voice still placid, "does not have a boss. It has a chief executive officer, and I can assure you I am not his bodyguard." "Then who are you?" she demanded. "The catering staff? Did you come to take my drink order?" "In that case," she said, a cruel smile playing on her lips, "I'll have a glass of the 98 Petrus, and be quick about it. My husband is waiting." The entire lounge was now watching. The Russian oligarch, the tech CEO. The attendants had frozen by the service bar, their faces pale. "Serafina!" Marcus's voice was a panicked squawk from across the room. He was running back, his face ashen. "Serafina, no!" But he was too late. The switch had been flipped. Serafina, enraged at being dismissed, at being challenged by this man, lost the last thread of her control. "What's the matter?" she taunted, stepping closer to Julian. "Cat got your tongue? Are you too stupid to remember the wine list? Or are people like you just not allowed to serve the good vintages?" "People like me," Julian repeated, his voice dangerously quiet. "And what people would that be, Mrs. Vance?" "You know exactly what I mean," she shrieked. The Polish was gone, revealing the raw, ugly bigotry beneath. People who don't belong. People who should be in the terminal with the commoners. This lounge is for us, not for— "Serafina, that's him!" Marcus yelled, finally reaching them. "That is—" But Serafina was in a rage. "This is what I think of your insolence." She grabbed a newly opened bottle of Chateau Petrus, a dark, velvety red, worth thousands, from a passing attendant's tray, and in one fluid, horrifying motion, she inverted it and poured the entire contents over Julian Sinclair's head. The room went utterly silent. The dark, sticky, impossibly expensive wine streamed down Julian's face. It matted his hair, ran in rivulets down his cheeks, and soaked the front of his bespoke suit, splashing onto his $2,000 shoes and the pristine beige carpet. He didn't move. He didn't even blink. He just stood there, dripping. Serafina had a look of triumphant, childish glee on her face. "There," she said, breathing heavily. "That's a more appropriate color for you." Marcus Vance looked like he was having a heart attack. His mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. He stared at his wife, then at the wine-soaked man, then back at his wife. Finally, he found his voice. It was a strangled whisper. "Serafina, you idiot, you stupid, Stupid woman." "What?" she said, turning to him, still giddy. "He deserved it, Marcus." "That." Marcus pointed a trembling finger at the man who was now calmly pulling a white silk handkerchief from his pocket and dabbing at his face. "That is Julian Sinclair, the CEO of Ethelred Capital." The silence that followed Marcus's words was not the polite, expensive hush of before. It was a vacuum. It was the absolute, deafening void of $1 billion evaporating into thin air. Serafina's triumphant smile froze, cracked, and then melted from her face. Her skin, which had been flushed with rage and champagne, turned a shade of white that matched the attendant's jacket. "What?" she whispered. "No, it can't be. You're lying." "Do I look like I'm lying, Serafina?" Marcus's voice was dead. He wasn't looking at her. He was looking at Julian Sinclair with the desperate, pleading gaze of a man on the gallows. Julian Sinclair finished wiping the wine from his face. His eyes, now visible, were not angry. They were not hurt. They were cold. They were the color of a winter ocean, and just as deep. He looked at the ruined $15,000 suit, the $2,000 shoes, and then he looked at Serafina. "Marcus," Serafina stammered, grabbing her husband's arm. "Fix this. This is a misunderstanding, a simple mistake. Tell him we'll pay for the suit. We'll buy him a new one." "Pay for his suit?" Marcus laughed, a high-pitched, hysterical sound. "He's wearing a suit that costs more than your car. He's wearing a watch that costs more than our house. You... Julian held up a single hand. Instantly, Marcus stopped talking. The entire lounge seemed to hold its breath. "Mr. Vance," Julian said, his voice completely level, though stained with red wine. "Please, control your wife." "Mr. Sinclair." "Julian, I am so sorry. I don't know what to say. She didn't mean. She's had too much to drink." "She knew exactly what she was doing," Julian said, his gaze shifting back to Serafina. "She just didn't know who she was doing it to. That's the part that bothers her. Not the act. The consequence." He took a step toward Serafina. She, for the first time in her life, took an instinctive step back. She had never been looked at like this, not as a woman or a prize or a boss, but as something to be analyzed, something to be liquidated. "You called me staff," he said, his voice a quiet rumble. "You called me a bodyguard. You insinuated I was a pilot. Then you asked me to fetch your wine. You called me stupid. You used a racial slur, and then you assaulted me." He ticked each point off on his fingers, his hand stained with the 1998. "Petrus, I... Serafina stammered. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a dawning animal panic. "Mr. Sinclair, please," Marcus begged, stepping between them. "This deal, it's vital to both of us. Let's not let a personal matter." "A personal matter?" Julian interrupted. "Mr. Vance, your wife just poured a bottle of wine on me in a public lounge and called me a slur. This is not a personal matter. This is a character clause matter." Marcus's blood ran cold. The character clause. It was a New Age piece of boilerplate legal ES that Ethelred Capital had insisted on inserting into the contract. Both parties and their immediate families agree to uphold a standard of personal and public conduct that does not bring disrepute upon the other party, a material breach of which may result in immediate termination of the agreement. At the time, Marcus had thought it was for their protection, to shield them from some scandal Julian might get into. It had never, not once, occurred to him that Serafina would be the liability. Seconds later, Julian continued, as if reading Marcus's thoughts. "Your family has lost $1 billion. He pulled his phone from his pocket. The screen was, miraculously, undamaged. With his thumb stained red, he pressed a single speed dial button. "No, wait, please!" Marcus lunged, as if to stop him. Julian simply turned his back, putting the phone to his ear. "Grace, yes, I'm fine. Yes, it happened. Worse, actually. No, I'm not surprised." He paused, listening. The entire lounge, from the oligarch to the attendants, was watching him. "Grace, terminate the Vance Donovan agreement," Julian said, his voice as calm as if he were ordering coffee. "Execute Article 5, Section 3, the character clause, material breach. Yes, effective immediately. And begin the short sell protocol. I want $1 billion short on Vance Donovan Holdings by the time the market opens in New York. Yes, all of it. Liquidate everything. It's a house of cards." Serafina let out a small, strangled scream. "A short sell? What does that mean? Marcus, what does that mean?" Marcus Vance had sunk into the suede chair she had just vacated. He was staring, sightless, at the stain on the carpet. "It means," he whispered, his voice hollow, "that he's not just cancelling the deal, Sarah. He's betting against us. He's going to destroy us." Julian Sinclair snapped his phone shut. He looked at the lounge manager, who was now hovering, wringing his hands. "My apologies for the mess," Julian said. "Please send the cleaning bill, and a bill for the bottle of Petrus, directly to Ethelred Capital. I will also require a new suit. I am flying to Davos, and I cannot travel like this." "Of course, Mr. Sinclair. Right away," the manager stammered. "And one more thing," Julian said. He looked over his shoulder, his cold eyes landing on the two shattered figures of Marcus and Serafina Vance. "My flight is in 10 minutes. I trust," he said, "that your commoner terminal is still accepting passengers." He turned and walked, dripping, out of the lounge, leaving a trail of red wine and financial ruin in his wake. The flight from Teterboro to Davos on a private jet should have been a 6-hour symphony of comfort and privilege. The Vance Donovan G650 was a $70 million extension of their ego, upholstered in cream leather and polished mahogany. A full bar was stocked, a private chef was on call, and the high-speed satellite internet was faster than most people's home connections. Today, it felt like a coffin. For the first hour, neither Marcus nor Serafina spoke. The plane climbed to 45,000 feet, slicing through the thin, cold air above the Atlantic. The flight attendant, a young woman named Chloe, had been with them for years. She knew Serafina's moods. She saw the look on Marcus's face, a grey, vacant terror she had never seen before, and the red, puffy-eyed rage on Serafina's. "Mrs. Vance? Mr. Vance? Can I get you anything? A drink?" Chloe asked tentatively. "Get out," Serafina whispered, her voice like gravel. "Ma'am? I said get out!" Serafina screamed, grabbing a heavy crystal tumbler and hurling it at the bulkhead. It shattered, spraying ice and scotch across the cabin. Go to the cockpit. Just leave us alone." Chloe fled, locking the cabin door behind her. The silence that returned was heavier this time, broken only by the hum of the engines and Serafina's ragged breathing. Finally, Marcus spoke. His voice was unrecognizable. It was small, weak, and filed down to a nub. "Do you have any idea? Any idea at all? What you have done?" It was a mistake," Serafina cried, the tears she had been holding back finally coming. These were not tears of remorse, they were tears of frustration. How was I supposed to know who he was? He was just sitting there. He was rude to me. You saw it. "He wasn't rude, Serafina," Marcus said, not even looking at her. He was staring out the window at the dark, curving edge of the earth. He was existing, and you couldn't stand it. You couldn't stand that a black man was in your lounge, in your space, and wasn't there to serve you. That's not true, isn't it? Marcus finally turned to her, and his eyes were as cold as Julian Sinclair's had been. How many times, Sarah? How many times have I told you to bite your tongue? The incident at the Amphar Gala with the Qatari ambassador. The time you called that reporter from Vanity Fair a tub of lard to her face. The staffing issues at every club we've ever belonged to. Your opinions were a charming eccentricity when we were on top. Now, they're a liability. Today they were a tactical nuclear weapon. You're blaming me? She shrieked. You're the one who was so desperate for this deal. You're the one who's been failing. You're the one who couldn't keep our finances in order. If you were half the man my father is, your father. Marcus let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. My God, you really don't know, do you? Don't know what? Why we needed this deal, Serafina. Why it was everything. Marcus leaned forward, his hands clasped so tightly his knuckles were white. It wasn't an investment. It wasn't expansion capital. It was a bailout. Serafina's mouth went dry. A bailout? Donovan Global, your father's legacy. It's a corpse. It has been for 3 years. Your father, Arthur Donovan, the Lion of Wall Street, has been cooking the books. He's been committing wire fraud, mail fraud, securities fraud. You name it. He's been using the pension fund to cover his margin calls. He's leveraged every building, every asset, every subsidiary to the hilt. Serafina just stared at him, shaking her head. No. You're lying. Papa he's Arthur Donovan. He's a criminal, Serafina. And I'm his co-conspirator. For the last 2 years, Vance Donovan Holdings has been funneling money into Donovan Global to keep the SEC from looking too close. I've been lying to investors, moving assets between shells. I've been breaking the law to protect your name, to protect your lifestyle. The confession hung in the air, sucking all the oxygen out of the cabin. The deal. The 1B from Ethelred, Serafina whispered. It was the last ditch, the final play, Marcus said. I was going to use Sinclair's money to plug the holes, to buy us another year. Just 1 more year to unwind your father's mess before it all came crashing down. So what happens now? She asked, her voice small. Now? Marcus looked at his Patek Philippe, the one that matched Julian Sinclair's. Now, the New York Stock Exchange opens in 30 minutes. At 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, Ethelred Capital, one of the most respected and feared firms on the planet, is going to announce a 1B short position on our company. It's a vote of no confidence from God. Our stock, VDH, will plummet. It'll be worthless by noon. Can't you call people? Call the banks. The banks? Marcus smiled, a terrible, empty smile. The banks are who we owe the money to, Serafina. The moment our stock hits the trigger price, which it will, probably by 9:31 a.m., the covenants on our loans will be breached. The banks won't just ask for their money. They'll seize it. They will seize everything. He pointed around the cabin. This plane, it's gone. The house in the Hamptons, gone. The penthouse on Park Avenue, gone. Your jewelry, your cars, your horses, your 300-pair collection of designer shoes, gone. All of it. Serafina looked down at the 12-carat diamond on her finger. Yes, Marcus said, seeing her gaze. That too. The reality of it was too vast to comprehend. It was like trying to understand the size of the ocean by looking at a glass of water. So we're poor, she said, the word feeling alien and disgusting on her tongue. We are beyond poor, Serafina, Marcus said, leaning his head back against the seat and closing his eyes. We are liabilities. We are social lepers. We are the people we used to laugh at. We are nothing. But my father, Donovan Global, your father, Marcus interrupted, will likely be arrested by the time we land in Switzerland. Julian Sinclair, he's not just a businessman, he's a killer. He wouldn't just cancel the deal. He wouldn't just short the stock. He would scorch the earth. He's probably on the phone with the Wall Street Journal right now. Or worse, the SEC. He's probably handing them all of our due diligence as we speak. All the fraud. My fraud. Serafina's breath hitched. You said you committed fraud too, for my father. Yes, Marcus said, his eyes still closed. Yes, I did. So, you're going to be arrested too? Marcus Vance finally opened his eyes. They were dead. Yes, Serafina. When we land, your father will go to prison, and so will I. But what about me? She cried, the true selfish terror finally breaking through. What happens to me? Marcus just looked at her. He didn't have an answer. For the first time, he didn't have the desire to have an answer. You, he said, will have to fly coach. The unraveling didn't happen all at once. It happened in a series of swift, brutal, and humiliating cuts. When they landed at the private airstrip in Geneva, there was no black Mercedes S-Class waiting for them. There was no diplomatic escort. Instead, there were two grim-faced Swiss police officers standing on the tarmac. Mr. Marcus Vance? One said. Yes, Marcus said, his voice a resignation. We have a request from the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission and the Department of Justice, Southern District of New York. You are to be detained pending an extradition hearing. Please come with us. Wait, Serafina cried, grabbing his arm. You can't. He's... Marcus, tell them who we are. Marcus gave her one last look. It was a look of pure, unadulterated pity, and it was the last time she would ever see him as a free man. It's over, Sarah, he said, and let the officers lead him away. Serafina was left standing on the tarmac, her Birkin bag in one hand, her passport in the other. The G6R50's pilots, who had just received a text from their parent company, Signature Aviation, informed her that the jet was being seized by creditors. She was not allowed back on board. Not even to get her lipstick. She was forced to take a taxi to the hotel, the lavish La Réserve, where they had a standing presidential suite. She walked into the marble lobby, a vision of disheveled fury. Serafina Vance, she snapped at the concierge. The key for the presidential suite, now. The concierge, a man named Jean-Pierre, did not move. He had a pained expression on his face. Madame Vance, I am so sorry. There appears to be a problem with your card. A problem? What problem? That's the Amex Centurion. It doesn't have a problem. Run it again. I have, madam. 4 times. It is declined. Declined? Serafina's voice went up an octave. That's impossible. Try this one. She threw a platinum visa at him. Declined. This one. A gold MasterCard. Declined. Every line of credit, every bank account, every financial instrument tied to the Vance Donovan name had been frozen, seized, or liquidated. Madame, Jean-Pierre said, his voice dropping, the hotel has been instructed by our corporate office. Your reservation has been cancelled. We are fully booked. Fully booked? Serafina looked around the empty, cavernous lobby. You're kicking me out? There is an incident, he said, gesturing to the television over the bar. Serafina turned, and her world fell apart. It was a live feed from CNBC. The ticker at the bottom of the screen was a sea of red. But the main story, the only story, was a high-resolution photo of her, in the lounge, her face twisted in a mask of rage, pouring a bottle of wine, and next to it, a picture of Julian Sinclair, dripping. The headline read, "The Billion-Dollar Bigot, How Serafina, Vance's Racist Rant, Took Down a 10B Empire." The story was everywhere. The Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, Page 6, the Daily Mail. The video, which someone in the lounge had of course filmed, was the #1 trending video on YouTube, Twitter, and TikTok. It had a name, the Teterboro Toss. She was, in the span of 6 hours, the most hated woman in the world. Her phone, which had been silent on the plane, lit up. Not with messages of support, but with Schadenfreude. Bunny Weatherford. "Sarah, darling, just saw the news. Utterly horrifying. I can't believe you'd wear that dress with those shoes. Let me know if you need anything. Not money, obviously." Her father, Arthur Donovan. A single garbled voicemail left just minutes before his own arrest at his Connecticut estate. The fraud. He knew. Sinclair. He knew. He set us up. That black bee. The call had cut out. Serafina sank into a chair in the lobby, her phone clattering to the floor. He set us up. What did that mean? This wasn't just a random encounter. This wasn't a mistake. This was a plan. She was forced to leave the hotel. Her friends in Davos, the ones she was supposed to meet for cocktails and panels, were suddenly in meetings. Her calls went to voicemail. She had in her purse about $4,000 in cash. It was the last money she had in the world. She used it to book a commercial flight. Not first class, not even business. Serafina Donovan Vance, for the first time in her 42 years of life, sat in a middle seat in premium economy on a flight from Geneva to New York. She wore oversized sunglasses, a scarf wrapped around her head, and the stench of her own shame. When she landed at JFK, she was a pariah. The paparazzi were waiting, not for a celebrity, but for a villain. The flashes exploded in her face. The questions hurled like rocks. "Serafina, why are you a racist? How does it feel to be broke? Did you know your husband was a crook? Was the wine worth $1 billion? She fled, pushing through the crowd, and hailed a yellow cab to the only place she had left, her parents' penthouse on Park Avenue. But when the taxi pulled up, the building was swarmed, not just with reporters, but with protesters, people, regular people, holding signs. Justice for the Donovan pensioners. Park of Cage for Arthur and Serafina. Karma is a bitch. Her father's fraud, it turned out, wasn't just numbers on a page. He had bankrupted the pension fund of 10,000 Donovan Global employees. He had stolen the retirement of truck drivers, factory workers, and secretaries. And she, Serafina, was now the face of that evil, the spoiled, racist, wine-tossing face of a family that had stolen from the poor to fund their lavish lives. The doorman, a man she had never bothered to learn the name of, wouldn't even let her in the building. "Sorry, Mom, the co-op board has voted. You're not welcome here. The U.S. Marshals have seized the apartment." Seized. Everything was seized. She was, quite literally, standing on the street on Park Avenue, with one Birkin bag, the clothes on her back, and $200 left to her name. The hard karma, as the sign said, was just beginning. While Serafina was experiencing the gravitational collapse of her world, Julian Sinclair was 30,000 feet over Greenland, in a new, freshly pressed suit, on his own jet, a state-of-the-art Bombardier Global 8000. He was drinking a glass of sparkling water and reading a financial report. His assistant, Grace, a sharp woman in her late 30s, walked in from the forward cabin. "The VDH stock," she said, "is trading at 0.18 cents. It's been delisted. Our short position has cleared. Well, it's a very big number, Julian." "Good," he said. not looking up. "The SEC has Arthur Donovan. The SDNY has Marcus Vance. The press has Serafina Vance. It's a clean sweep." "Good," he said again. Grace paused. "It's done, Julian. It's finally done. 25 years. Julian Sinclair finally closed the report and looked up at her. The cold corporate mask was gone. His eyes were sad. They were the eyes of a man who had just finished a marathon he never wanted to run. 25 years, he repeated. "Do you think he'd be proud, Grace?" "He would be," she said softly. "Your father would be astounded." This is the twist. This is the part of the story they don't tell you on CNBC. Julian Sinclair was not new money. He was, in fact, old money that had been stolen. 30 years ago, Ethelred Capital did not exist. There was only Thomas Sinclair, a brilliant, ambitious, and unfailingly moral man, a black man who had broken every barrier, earning his MBA from Wharton and rising to become the chief financial officer of a company called Donovan Global. Thomas Sinclair was the financial wizard. Arthur Donovan was the face, the hard-drinking, back-slapping lion who took all the credit. For 5 years, Thomas Sinclair made Donovan Global the most profitable company on the East Coast. And then he found the other set of books. He found Arthur Donovan's slush funds. He found the executive loans that were never paid back. He found the seeds of the very fraud that Marcus Vance would one day inherit. Thomas Sinclair, being a moral man, confronted Arthur. He gave him an ultimatum. "Go to the board, Arthur. Fix this. Make it right, or I will." The next day, Thomas Sinclair was arrested. Arthur Donovan had spent the night reverse engineering the fraud, framing his CFO for the entire thing. He'd planted documents. He'd bribed 2 junior accountants. It was his word, the word of the lion, against the upstart black executive. Thomas Sinclair was convicted. He was ruined. He lost his job, his reputation, his savings, all held in Donovan Global stock, which Arthur cancelled, and his house. He died 5 years later of a stroke, a broke and broken man, his name a synonym for corporate malfeasance. His son, Julian, was 18 years old. He was a freshman at Harvard, and he had to drop out to work 2 jobs to support his family. He stood at his father's funeral and made a vow. He would not just clear his father's name, he would destroy the name of the man who had slandered him. It took him 25 years. He finished his degree at night. He got a job at Goldman Sachs, but he wasn't a company man. He was a man on a mission. He worked 20-hour days. He saved every penny. He was smarter, faster, and more ruthless than anyone around him, because his why was bigger. He founded Ethelred Capital with one goal. He built it into a $100 billion private equity juggernaut, a shark that could swallow other sharks. And all that time, he was waiting. He was watching Donovan Global. He watched as the company rotted from the inside, just as his father had predicted. He watched as the arrogant, foolish Arthur Donovan passed the reins to his weak, desperate son-in-law, Marcus Vance. And then he made his move. The 1B deal was never a deal. It was a Trojan horse. It was a way to get inside. The due diligence phase was just Julian's team of forensic accountants, the best in the world, getting legal access to the very books his father had been killed for finding. They downloaded everything. The evidence of Marcus's fraud, layered on top of Arthur's, was all they needed. "The meeting at Teterboro," Grace said. "It was quite a performance, Julian." Julian looked down at his hands. "It wasn't a performance. I needed to see them. I needed to see the people who did that to my father. Before I pulled the plug." "And Serafina?" Grace asked. "You knew she was a liability. But the wine? You couldn't have planned that." "No," Julian said, a small, dark smile playing on his lips for the first time. "I couldn't have planned that. But I knew her. I've read her page 6 clippings for a decade. I knew her type. Arrogant, entitled, and predictable." He had set them up. He had arranged to be in that lounge at that exact time. He had known, through his surveillance of their movements, that they were flying to Davos. He had made sure to sit where she would see him. He had even, on his call, purposefully mentioned Donovan Global, knowing she would overhear. He had baited the hook. He had just assumed she would make a snide comment, one that he could leak to the press later. "She exceeded my expectations," Julian said. She thought she was pouring wine on a nobody, but she was really she was pouring the gasoline on her own father's funeral pyre. "She gave me the one thing I didn't have." "What's that?" Grace asked. "Poetic justice," Julian said. "My father was ruined by a lie in the Wall Street Journal. The Donovans, they were ruined by a truth on YouTube. I think he would have appreciated that." He turned to look out the window, at the endless, blue-white carpet of clouds. The mission was over. The hole in his life, the one that had been driving him for 25 years, was finally, violently, filled. "Grace," he said, "the profits from the Vance Donovan short, all of it. I want a new fund created." "What kind of fund, Julian?" "The Thomas Sinclair Pension Fund. We're going to find every single employee, every single family that Arthur Donovan stole from, and we're going to make them whole, every last penny, with interest." 3 months later, the name Vance was now a curse word. Marcus Vance had taken a plea deal. In a desperate, self-serving attempt to shorten his own sentence, he testified against his father-in-law. The press dubbed him the singing cuckold. He was sentenced to 8 years in a minimum security prison for his role in the fraud. Arthur Donovan, the lion, was not so lucky. His crimes were too deep, his victims too many. He was found guilty on 42 counts of fraud, theft, and embezzlement. He was sentenced to 150 years. He would die in prison. And Serafina? There was no plea deal for her. She hadn't committed a financial crime. Her crime was one of character, and the punishment was social. She had, as Marcus predicted, been left with nothing. The ironclad prenup, which she had insisted on to protect her family's money, had a reverse clause. It stated that if one party, through gross negligence or public scandal, caused a material loss to the marital estate, that party would forfeit all claims. Pouring a one-veto deal down the drain was, as her divorce lawyer, a court-appointed one for the first time in her life, explained, the definition of gross negligence. She was broke. She was not just, I have to sell the Hamptons house, broke. She was, I don't know how I'm paying for this cup of coffee, broke. Her friends, like Bunny Weatherford, had long since abandoned her. To be associated with Serafina Vance was to be toxic. She was a social pariah. She had tried to get a job. But what could she do? Her resume consisted of chairing galas and summering. She had no skills. She had no references. And her name, her face. It was infamous. She tried to get a job as a hostess at a mid-level restaurant. The manager laughed at her. Have you work here? The customers would spend all night asking you to pour wine on them. She was 42 years old, and, for the first time, utterly alone. We find her, 6 months after the Teterboro toss, in the place she dreaded most. The place she had mocked Julian Sinclair for belonging. A public airport. JFK. She was not in a private lounge. She was not even in the main terminal. She was in a windowless break room in the sub-level of Terminal 4. She was wearing a drab, ill-fitting, navy blue uniform. After months of rejection, one company had finally hired her, a third-party contractor that cleaned the cabins of international jets between flights, the overnight sanitation crew. It was the only job she could get. It was anonymous, it was at night, and it was the only place that would hire a Vance. Her boss, a woman named Maria, looked at her with suspicion. "You're Serafina, right? The new girl?" "Just Sarah," she whispered. "Right. Well, Sarah, you're on toilets. First-class cabin. American Airlines Flight 101 from London. They had a rough landing, and some drunk hedge funder redecorated the lavatory. Here's your bucket." Serafina took the bucket and the rubber gloves. Her hands, which had once been manicured to perfection, were now raw and red. She walked onto the empty, dark plane. The first-class cabin. It was a cruel mockery of her old life. The lie-flat seats, the empty champagne flutes. She went into the small lavatory. The hedge funder had, indeed, been sick. Everywhere. Serafina looked at the mess, then looked at her own reflection in the small mirror. Her hair was lank, her face was pale, and her eyes were empty. She began to cry. Not loud, dramatic sobs, just silent, hopeless tears. This was it. This was her life. This was the bottom. "What's the matter, lady?" A co-worker, an older man with a kind, tired face, was standing in the doorway. His name was Sal. "You look like you just lost your best friend," he said. I lost everything," she whispered. "Join the club," Sal said, sighing. He pointed to the Donovan Global logo still visible, though faded, on his uniform. He was part of a work release program for ex-employees. "I was a line foreman at the Donovan plant in Ohio for 30 years, paid my dues, had a pension, then, poof, all gone. Arthur Donovan and his family." He spat the word. "They took it all. My pension, my house, my wife's cancer treatment fund. She's gone now, and I'm here, 65 years old, cleaning toilets." Serafina froze. Her hand in its yellow rubber glove was trembling. I'm so sorry," she said. "Yeah, well," Sal said, not unkindly. "Sorry don't pay the bills. Come on, new girl, we ain't got all night. Those toilets ain't gonna scrub themselves." He tossed her a sponge, and for the first time, Serafina understood. The karma. It wasn't just that she was poor, it was that she was now, finally, exactly where she belonged. She was, at last, staff. 1 year later, the world had, for the most part, moved on. The Teterboro toss was a forgotten meme. Marcus Vance was a name in a prison ledger. Arthur Donovan was a cautionary tale in business school textbooks. Julian Sinclair was on the cover of Forbes. The headline, "The New Face of Capitalism: How Julian Sinclair Turns Revenge into Redemption." The article detailed the incredible success of the Thomas Sinclair Pension Fund. It told the story of his father, Thomas, and his 25-year quest for justice. It spoke of the 10,000 families he had made whole. He was a hero, a modern-day folk legend. He was at the Milken Institute Global Conference in Los Angeles, the new, undisputed king of Wall Street. He finished his keynote address on ethical capital allocation to a thunderous standing ovation. As he walked off stage, a woman in a server's uniform, black pants, white shirt, stepped forward, holding a silver tray with a glass of water. "Mr. Sinclair," she said. Julian stopped. He looked at her. The room was full of billionaires, but for a moment, they were the only two people in it. It was Serafina. She was different. She was thin, painfully so. The famous blonde hair was its natural, mousy brown, pulled back in a severe bun. There was no jewelry, no makeup. Her fingernails were short and clean, but the biggest difference was her eyes. The arrogance, the fire, the entitlement. It was all gone. They were just tired. Julian's security detail, a large man named Mike, tensed. "Sir?" Julian put a hand on his arm. "It's fine, Mike. Wait for me by the car." He took the glass of water from the tray. "Thank you." "Sarah," she said. Her voice was quiet. "My name is Sarah." She had, it turned in, found a niche. After her stint cleaning toilets, she had been promoted to the catering staff at JFK. And when the company got a contract for a big LA conference, she had begged to be on the team. She needed the money. She had spent the last 3 days serving coffee and pastries to the very people who had once been her peers. They didn't even see her. She was invisible, part of the furniture. I wanted to say something," she said, not meeting his eye, her hands twisting the small white serving towel. "Oh?" Julian said. He was not cold. He was not warm. He was neutral. I read the story about your father, Thomas Sinclair." She took a ragged breath. I remember him. He came to our house for Christmas once, when I was a little girl. He brought me a doll, a Cabbage Patch doll. It was the only one I wanted." Julian's expression flickered. This he did not know. "My father, Arthur. He was jealous of your father," Serafina said, the memories coming back in a painful rush. "He was smarter than my dad. Everyone knew it. My dad. He couldn't stand that. He couldn't stand anyone being smarter or better." She finally looked up at him, and her eyes were filled with tears. But for the first time, they were not tears of self-pity. "What my family did to yours, it was a sin. It was evil. There's no excuse. And what I did to you, in that lounge, it was the same sin, the same ugly sickness that my father had." She was crying freely now, but she didn't wipe the tears. She was a cater waiter, and she couldn't smudge. I am so, truly, deeply sorry. For all of it. For your father. For your family. And for the wine." Julian Sinclair looked at this broken woman, the woman who had cost her family $1 billion, the woman who had, in a strange way, given him his final, perfect victory. He had come here for revenge. He had achieved it 100-fold. He had destroyed their name, their fortune, and their legacy. But he hadn't, until this very second, gotten an apology. He looked at her, standing there in her $20 shoes, holding a silver tray. And he did something he had not planned. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card. It was his personal card. "Sarah," he said, Are you a good worker? Do you show up on time? Do you work hard?" She looked at him, confused. Yes, I do. It's all I have. My father's pension fund," Julian said, "has an outreach program for victims of Donovan Global. All of them. That includes the families of the men who went to prison, the wives, the children. They are victims, too." Serafina's head snapped up. "It's a job," Julian said, placing the card on her empty tray. "It's an entry-level admin position, answering phones, getting coffee. It pays, not well, but it's a start. It's a way back, if you want it." Serafina stared at the card. "Julian Sinclair, CEO, Ethelred Capital." "Why?" she whispered. After everything, why would you help me?" Julian looked at her for a long time. "Because my father, Thomas Sinclair, he wasn't just a smart man. He was a good man," Julian said. "And destroying the Donovans, that was for me. But this is for him." He turned and walked away, leaving Serafina Vance alone in the hallway, holding a glass of water, a wet serving towel, and the first, tiny, impossible seed of redemption. The karma, hard and brutal, had hit back, but in the end, it had also, in its own strange way, set her free. That day, Serafina learned the hardest lesson of all. Karma isn't just about punishment, it's about balance. She had lived a life of taking, and now she was being given a chance to earn. The story of the billionaire's wife ended in that airport lounge, but the story of Sarah, the admin assistant, was just beginning. It wouldn't be easy, and she would never get back what she lost. But for the first time in her life, she had something real. Thank you for listening to this story. If you are on the edge of your seat and believe in the power of karma, then don't keep this story to yourself. Please hit that like button so I know you want more tales of justice and dramatic twists. Share this video with someone who needs to see that what goes around always comes around. And most importantly, subscribe to this channel and ring that notification bell so you never miss a single story of hard karma and real-life consequences.